Drake Maye, your opinion of him last Thursday, and also how is that carried into his performance during camp since then?
I thought he had his best 3 days from the game Thursday and then even the last 2 days of practice. So it's starting to look better, Fred, on a more consistent basis. And I think he's closing the gap with Jacoby, who I would say hasn't looked as good the last 3 days. So I'm sort of curious to see where it leads. They have 4 practices this week and then the preseason game. I do think there was a larger gap there. So I still think he has more ground to cover, but it at least makes this week, interesting from a sense of does it keep heading in that direction or, does Jacoby sort of put his foot down and reestablish himself there?
Okay, so you talked to Mayo a couple of days ago, and you wrote about it over the weekend. He said that it's definitely a competition. He reiterated that. He said it wasn't over, but he said something like the entire offense needs to continue to play well. To me, that assumes facts, not in evidence, because if he's waiting for the entire offense, to continue playing well, I haven't seen the entire offense playing well, but is it really going to hinge more on that than just who's better at the position at the beginning or even midway through the season?
I feel like it will, Hardy, because I think the situation that let's just say they were seriously considering putting Drake Maye in there as the starter, which to me it seems a little early for that, but you never know what they're thinking and a lot can change. Like Hardy, there was a play yesterday in practice where Jacoby Brissett looked like he hit his hand on the helmet of a teammate.
Yeah.
And my first thought was, oh my God, like that would change the picture in an instant, right? So, but I think you have to be cognizant of the situation that you would put Drake Maye in, right? And what does that offensive line look like? What do the skill positions look like? Right now, they're operating with their top 3 tight ends down. So I think it's sort of connected, right? It's not just Drake versus Jacoby. It's what else is around him.
Okay, let's talk about that. Elliot Wolf spoke to the media. What was the deal? First of all, what was the deal with them cutting it short?
So I didn't even know if it was short, Fred. I don't know if it didn't feel like it was cut short, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think it was just short. Like,
okay.
And
fair enough. Yeah. So the general manager has to talk to the press, I guess, once during the preseason. And he was a little Belichickian, wouldn't you say, with his responses?
I thought so. I think so. I always look at it first, Fred, like try to understand the person you're talking to. And of course, with Bill Belichick, that was like often a mystery. I think Elliot's like he's more of an introvert. That's the first thing I would say. So right off the bat, putting him in that situation, that's probably not like not the most comfortable situation for him. And I think that came across a little bit in his answers. So that's the first thing I would say. And then in terms of the insight, like what I took out of it is they're not looking at free agent offensive tackles, which that was interesting to me.
Okay, let me just have you expand on that. So
Definitely.
That was what I was going to eventually get to is the Elliot Wolf talking about the offensive line. Yeah. And, you mentioned playing Drake Maye. And if the only reason they weren't playing Drake Maye was because of that the offensive line wasn't good enough to justify it or to, that would be a kind of a knock against the front office. You could make the argument. What was talk about the offensive line and not going after a free agent?
So, well, that part interests me. I mean, ultimately, Fred, to me, like when we go through these interviews, like I want to try to extract information that people following the team want to know. And I feel like the offensive line has been one of the biggest stories of training camp. So I thought it was interesting that he was that decisive to say, we're going to stick with what we have. And I don't, I think it's a fair question to ask. Could the front office have done more on the offensive line? I also think to be fair to them, like Fred, like that's a tough spot. Like they re-signed Awenu to a big money deal. Chuks Okorafor was a free agent. They're counting on. We'll see how that works. They drafted one in the 3rd round. They drafted one in the 4th round. Could they have done more? Sure. Like it's not like they did nothing, right? And so, That's a tough one, and it's not like there's a lot of offensive linemen
right
that are out there,
yeah
right?
they weren't going to get the 35-year-old that the Jets signed. That wouldn't have made any sense. I guess because my whole theory was I like the way that the Patriots have been operating. I like that they're conceding that they're in a rebuild and that they're signing players that they think have a future with the team, and they're going to try to build through the draft rather than free agency. But where are you with if it's the only, again, I'm going to go back to it, if it's the only reason they're not playing Drake Maye, like if they felt like, you know what, this kid's ready to play in the NFL. He should be our starter, but the reason we're not doing it is because we don't want to ruin him because our offensive line is so poor that we feel that it will screw up his development. Do you think that's a mistake by the front office in that sense?
So Fred, I actually don't think I think they'll play him. Because that's what I took from Elliott Wolf. I don't think he felt like the performance the other night was that bad offensive line wise. He mentioned they gave up 1 sack, and he also pointed out it was the Eagles' second unit defense, which I think is important context. They're not even playing their best players. So yeah, and I look at it and I say that's their point of view, and then the 1 sack that Drake took, like to me, that's scary, right? And so I don't think it's been like, it wasn't terrible Thursday night, whereas in the joint practice Tuesday, they actually couldn't run a play because of it, right? So let's see how they got 1 more week. Let's see what it looks like, and they'll have opportunity to add. I just don't know, like with the waiver wire, I just don't know how, like if there'll be an impactful player there for them, at the position.
Right.
How much optimism is there on the other side of the football? I mean, obviously the offense has struggled. They're not expected to score a ton of points this year, but the defense, now that Judon is gone, they have done pretty well for themselves over the first 2 exhibition games, if nothing else.
I think so, John. I mean, they had 10 sacks, 8 different players with sacks. Corner, I'd say corner after Gonzalez and Jonathan Jones would be a little bit of a thing to look at. Safety after Duggar and Peppers. So I think that like it's looked fine against, backups. I think the thing that I would look at from a critical standpoint, John, is like depth wise, if they lose a guy, is the drop off there a little more significant than it's been in the past. So just, I'm sort of keeping an eye on that, but relative, I'd say the performances look pretty good defensively.
More specifically, Gonzalez, who did not show well from all accounts in the joint practice against the Eagles. How do you think he looked last Thursday night?
Thought good. I thought there was one play that was important for him, John. It was just like a simple tackle, right? Like, so think about the way his season ended last year. It was on a tackle in that Cowboys game and, had the shoulder injury. So I think just getting the tackle in there was important for him just to sort of take that next step forward. And I thought he was in coverage on 1 slant on a 3rd down that technique wise, like he tried to, I'm not that I'm a football coach, but looked like maybe could have technique wise got his hand around differently. But I think he's been fine. And I think if he's the biggest issue that we're talking about, then they're going to be just fine defensively.
All right, Mike. I mean, I look at the offense, we look at the defense. The special teams were an issue the last couple of years, and certainly part of the coaching carousel that's been going on there. Now you've got the wrinkle of the new kickoff rule in there. Anything to be concerned about? I think the kicker situation may have sorted itself out, but anything else going on there? Because for a team that may not be putting a ton of points on the board, as much as I hate to think about special teams, might have to pay extra attention to the special teams.
Hardy, I think that the kicker thing is interesting. This Joey Sly, if we get the numbers right, I think he's 7 of 7 on 50 yards or more.
Yeah, I think that one is sorted, isn't it?
Yeah, it feels like I'd be surprised if it's not him at this point. I guess we got to leave open the possibility that there's, this week in the game. Let's see if it turns. And I think return wise, they've done some good stuff. But I just wonder if these other teams aren't showing what they're going to do in the regular season. So I'm like hesitant to put too much stock in it, but I'd say that side has looked pretty good for them too.
One other thing, going back to the offense, obviously there's a lot of inexperience at the wide receiver position, so tight end would be key for this team, but there's a lot of injuries there right now.
Oh man, John. In addition to the offensive line, I just sort of look at the skill position players. And the questions I ask are who's getting open right away to make life easy for the quarterback. And other than Pop Douglas, like I just don't see that consistently. So that would be one question I'd have. And tight end wise, Hunter Henry still sidelined. Austin Hooper would be the next guy. He went out yesterday or 2 days ago. Mitchell Wilcox, the next guy, is out. So they're down to their 4th and 5th tight ends. Jaheim Bell, their 7th round pick out of Florida State, had 3 touchdowns in practice yesterday. Maybe this is a chance to see more of him and what he might be able to add to the offense. But banged up there for sure, John.
All right. Well, Mike Reiss, he's on ESPN. He's a big star, and he's never seen behind the candelabra, which is.
I feel like I let you down there, Fred. Sorry.
Hey, listen, buddy. Life is long. You got time. You got a full 7 days until you're back on the show.
And I don't feel like you've lived until you've seen behind the candelabra.
Okay.
It's going to teach you things about life.
Full review coming up next week.
I like it. I like it. I'm putting it on my list.
All right. Thanks, Mike. We appreciate the time.
Thanks, guys. Have a great show.
All right. Thank you.
If you like that clip, and how could you not? Check out more videos from Toucher and Hardy here. Point slightly up and to the left. For more Patriots analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. Point slightly down and to the left. And for the latest from the Sports Hub, download at 985thesportshub.com.